So you've reached a point in your life where you're starting to understand the patterns that are around you. You're starting to get sick of going in the same hamster wheel over and over and over again. You're starting to get to the point where you want peace. You're sick of fighting. You're sick of having to push so hard. You're sick of giving so much for so little in return. Okay, wonderful. You've hit a place in your life where you're ready to start doing some shadow work. So what is shadow work? Shadow work is essentially the process of processing emotional traumas, going within to find the answers to your fears, to your limitations, and to the things that are happening to you. So how do we do that? Why do we do that? When do we do that? All the good stuff, right? So first of all, when do we need to do shadow work? We need to do shadow work when we realize that we are stuck in some sort of way, or that a pattern is repeating in some sort of way. Because that's typically happening because it's trying to show you something and you're not listening. So it's like, oh, I'm gonna do it again. Let's try a little louder this time, right? A little louder. And then it just keeps going and going and going and getting more intense until you actually pay attention to it. So how that can look, right? You get out of high school, you're in your first relationship, and it's kind of not really great. The guy didn't treat you with respect, and you kind of stayed in it until he dumped you. Okay, so that was an opportunity to recognize, I deserve better than that. But if you didn't learn that lesson, next relationship is going to be worse and worse and worse until you're finally like, I love me enough. I'm not going to tolerate this crap anymore. And you start to set your standards a little bit higher. You start to understand why these things are happening and what you've been doing to allow these things. And then boom, there you have it. You've done a little bit of shadow work. So shadow work is essentially turning around and looking the things that are hindering you in their face and asking them what the hell they want and why they're there. So a couple ways we can do this. Start off with your fears. What are you afraid of? Find what it is. Okay, now we're gonna ask, why am I afraid of this? Whatever it is. Then we're gonna go, okay, I understand why I'm afraid of it. Let's look at the ration here. Let's try to understand all angles of it. Okay, is this serving me? No. What lessons is this gonna teach me? What can I learn from this? Once you get to the point where you've learned the lesson, you're ready to process it, you're ready to let it go. That's one way to do it. Now, how that can look. There's a lot of different ways this can look depending on what the scenario is. Okay, so for example, if it's a fear, you have a fear of, I don't know, let's say you have a fear of snakes. Oh, this is a great one. I'll use me for example. When I was a kid, I was super afraid of snakes. I won't even say as a kid, up until recently, as an adult, I was super afraid of snakes. I was really scared of snakes and I never knew why. And then I started to do shadow work and I started to realize, my mom kind of imposed that on me because she was super terrified of snakes, and which hyper stimulated that fear in me that I don't think would have existed otherwise. So, and then, growing up, it's the devil's a snake and all this stuff. It just kind of emphasized over and over and just kind of made it to the point where if I were to see a snake, I would likely throw up or pass out. It was that bad. So how did I get over it? Okay. One of my favorite ways to do shadow work is exposure therapy. So once I've understood what it is, I'm like, okay, this is teaching me a lesson. This is teaching me that I need to not let things limit me. So what am I going to do? I'm going to expose myself to it. So literally it started one day. I took my daughter to the zoo. It was her birthday. This lady had a snake. My daughter started acting like she was scared of the snake. My daughter had never seen a snake before. And I was literally inside. I was like, oh, hell no. I am not passing this on. So I go over to her and I'm like, oh, baby, it's just a snake. And I go pet the snake. Okay, inside, I'm freaking dying because I'm like, oh my God, it's going to bite me. Please don't bite me. Please don't bite me. But I was also I am not going to let this pass on. This cycle ends with me. I'm not going to emphasize fear in my child. So pet the snake. Okay, whew, everyone's good. My daughter, all of a sudden, she went from crying to laughing and she wanted to touch the snake. Perfect. Okay. But that wasn't it. I was still scared of snakes after that. I mean, that was a good step. So I was like, okay, I need to expose myself. So I started going to the aquarium with my kids. They have a snake room. I'd go in there and I'd start looking at all these poisonous snakes through the glass. And at first it was a scene of Harry Potter where I'm any minute the glass is going to disappear and the snake is coming out. But then it got to the point where I was it's kind of cool how they are and how they look and everything, And I don't necessarily like them. I'm not going to go get a pet snake, but I've gotten to the point where I've exposed myself to it so much that there are some snakes that I do kind of like one day I was trail riding and I look over and I see this black racer literally just sitting there with his head up looking at me, and I was like, you look like you're trying to like tell me something. Like you look kind of cool, you know? And I just kind of talked to him for a second. I talk to animals, whatever. You know, but the whole purpose of this is for you guys to understand the shadow work involved, right? Like, okay, so I understood my fear, where it came from. I realized that it wasn't even my own fear. It was conditioned into me. And I was like, I am going to beat this by constantly exposing myself to it. And, you know, pushing myself, right? And it's going to look different depending on the scenario. If people pleasing is your issue, right? First thing you need to do, if you're one of those friends that's always everybody's doormat and everybody's bitch, what you need to do is you need to figure out, where did that come from? Okay, well, as I dig deep, I realized that as a child, I was not allowed to say no. If I said no, I was chastised for it. And if I said yes, I was praised for it, or I was left alone, depending on what it was. So I developed this idea that in order to survive, I need to say yes. But do I really want to say yes? No, I wasn't taught to use my free will as a kid. All right, now you understand that. Don't get caught in like being mad at mom or anything. Mom was just doing what mom was conditioned to do. It's not worth going into that space. Don't become a victim. But recognizing it. Okay, now understanding, hey, I've been punishing myself for like all these years, and it was literally not even my feelings or emotions. It was conditioning that was outside of me. Okay, now you got to go through the process of forgiving yourself. Don't get mad at yourself and hoard that guilt. Okay, understand why you did it. Okay, well, I forgive me because I understand, you know, I was only doing this because, you know, this was imposed on me and I was a child. Okay, that's great. But you know what I can do now? I can change it. So it's naturally going to be wired in my brain to always say yes. But now that I have an understanding of why I shouldn't say yes, because I'm literally putting myself last and always being everybody's doormat, and people are treating me the way I'm treating myself, I need to make some changes. So the next time you're faced with an opportunity to speak up and say no, take the opportunity. At first, it's going to be like, oh my God, I don't want to hurt their feelings, or I don't want their judgment. But this is where you need to go back into your logic again. Does it matter if somebody's judging you? People are always judging you, whether they say it to your face or not. They're always judging you. Does that kill you? Because you're being judged every day and you're not dead yet. So there's step number one. And then, you know, the feeling of empowerment that you're going to feel once you've gone through this process and you've started to stand up for yourself, it's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, most of you are probably going to go back and forth into different extremes. This happens often. So if you've been spending a lot of time being super submissive and super passive, you're likely going to go into a phase of your life where you're becoming very aggressive and very, you know, protective of yourself. And there's good reason for that. It's because, you know, you're kind of not comfortable yet with standing up for yourself, and you're feeling the need to kind of go extra, and maybe you have some feelings that need to be worked out with that as well. But that's okay, because in order to really find balance and to understand how balance works, you have to kind of experience both extremes. You know, you can't appreciate love without experiencing hate, and, you know, pain without not having, you can't, sorry, I'm tongue-tied here. You don't appreciate being well until you've experienced pain, is what I'm trying to say. So with that being said, guys, okay, this is how we do shadow work. You're going to help yourself understand it. You're going to get to a place where you see the things that you've done wrong. You see the things that other people have imposed on you. We're not holding on to any guilt or resentment. We're letting all of that go, and we're changing our behaviors moving forward. And whenever we're faced with it, we're walking through it. We're literally walking through it. If we're afraid to walk through it, you're going to close your eyes and walk through it. What I mean by that, oh my God, I'm really, really scared to do that. And just go do it. Like, you just run into it. Don't think about it. When you let your mind start telling you what to do, your mind's going to convince you otherwise. You need to lead with your heart. So when your heart knows you need to do something, shut your mind off for a minute, run towards it. Don't think about it. Don't ask anyone else's opinion, because everyone's going to have their own opinion. Just do what you feel you need to do. And over time, you're going to feel so invigorated. And a lot of times it's going to heal like instantly. Like, there's some situations where it's not a super instant, but there have been a lot of situations for myself anyways, where it's been like, oh, that's it. Okay, cool. No, it's good. I had a serious fear of getting a tattoo and like of needles. And I sat there and I worked myself up and was like, oh my God. And the second that thing touched me, like, I was like, that's it. Okay. And then I was no longer afraid. And then literally by the end of the first tattoo, I was like, I want to get more, like, right now. But the tattoo guy was like, no, I got to go. So yeah, with that being said, you know, everything has its own timeline for healing, but as long as you put the effort in and you start doing this work, some tools I recommend: journaling, visualization of releasing energy, visualization of calling your energy back to you that you've given away. you know, talking to somebody who's a safe space for you. If you have a good therapist, if you have a good, you know, friend or whatever, not somebody who's gonna impose their beliefs on you, or try to change your mind, but that's gonna actually just give you a space to let it all out. Lots of grounding, going outside barefoot is really good for you. Going in water, spending time in nature, all of these things will help the healing process. So hope you guys enjoy your shadow work. If you guys need any help, please send me a message. If you like my messages, subscribe, like, comment below something inspirational. You guys are awesome.